right. Welcome back to another exciting episode of the I Love Annuities podcast. I am Jeremiah Conger.
And I am Zachary Van Ness. Together we are the Annuity Dudes.
Dudes. Today, we are tackling a topic that isn't always easy to talk about, but it's critical for retirees and pre-retirees, and that is the cognitive aging and how it affects our finances.
Right. So we're also going to talk about something many people don't worry about, but few actually plan for, becoming a financial or emotional burden on your loved ones.
Yeah, Zach, I would say that this is probably one of the most reoccurring emotional topics that comes to fruition during our meetings with our prospective clients. You know, when you start to go into the defined objectives of why that person is looking to possibly purchase an annuity or trying to understand how to appropriately use an annuity, a lot of times those conversations end up going towards these types of emotions. And that is, you know, ultimately never becoming a financial burden to their loved ones. And then what I also find interesting is that I speak to some people that have no family, like no next of kin at all, but they still don't want to be a burden on anybody, including the government, right? They don't even want to like have to worry about the government taking care of them. They want to have their finances and their income streams and things in place so that they can truly remain independent and most importantly maintain their dignity throughout the rest of their life. And I think that that's important to note there, that that is something that I think we all have in common.
Yeah, I would agree with you. A large portion of the meetings that I have center around holding that independence into retirement and not being a burden and having something, if they do have next of kin, having something to leave as a benefit and not taking away from what their intended path is of leaving a legacy. So
Yeah,
what we'll
for
do
sure.
is we'll jump right into our first segment here, which is mainly focused on that cognitive aging, which refers to the gradual decline in brain function and naturally occurs as we get older, including slower processing speeds, memory issues, and decreased decision-making abilities.
Yeah, just a simple Google search about cognitive decline and when that starts to actually occur. The Google Gemini AI response was that the gradual decline in mental abilities as we age typically begins in the mid 60s. However, the exact age can differ, and it depends on some individual factors like genetics, lifestyle, and medical conditions. But, you know, if you think of it like a bell curve, right? Like there, you start to get over the hump right as you're approaching your 60s. And that's actually an interesting correlation to retirement and retirement age. So it, you know, ultimately this cognitive decline is inevitable, but that's where it comes down to understanding the proper planning and the best use cases for annuities and things to help you mitigate these potential risks. So, when it comes to money management, it's definitely important to have a plan for that in retirement, especially when it comes to these complex decisions like investment reallocation, meeting your required minimum distributions, and income. Ultimately, your retirement income. That does take some skill and some level of cognitive ability to be able to distribute your assets and turn those into income. And that requires clear thinking ultimately.
Yeah, and we take this information, some of it being from what we've experienced with client meetings, but ultimately this goes much further, right? So we can pull up research papers to support that. And the FINRA Investor Education Foundation found the financial literacy scores declining with age, but the confidence in one's ability remains the same or even potentially increases, which is this dangerous combination of this give and take battle that we may have. And just to share some information on that, I have that white paper. Let me add that here.
Isn't that interesting though that the confidence increases while the actual financial literacy decreases. Like that's pretty interesting when when you kind of think about that. Like, as you're getting older and you've like lived this longer life and you've gone through all of these ups and downs financially and you've made most of your money like most people in the latter part of your life, and you think you're wise from all of that experience, but because of that cognitive decline starts to occur, which you obviously aren't aware of necessarily, your confidence is up because you're like, "Oh, I've been around the block. I've done this and that, and I've gotten my lumps handed to me," or you've gotten you've gotten some experience, whether it be through hardship or through winning in
Mhm.
your financial life. Because of that financial literacy going down due to the cognitive decline, your confidence is higher. But it's just crazy that that actually happens.
Well, and I think it's partly, it becomes a little bit more relatable or something that you can see, touch, and feel when it comes down to the physical attributes. As we see and feel those decline with age, we know it's happening, right? So, from the cognitive ability, we can't put a thumbprint on it and say, oh, boom, this is what's happening, because the effects aren't the same, right? It's not a physical characteristic.
I think that that's definitely a big component of it. But I also think too, like as you go to retire, and you kind of step away from being in the mix of all of these things financially related, mainly like because you're not working anymore, you're not having that water cooler talk anymore about the markets and the current events and things. You're not having the same type of interactions that you used to have during your working years, so you kind of lose touch. It's almost like I can relate to this analogy, if you will, but it's like I grew up with technology. So did you, Zach, and we kind of knew we were on the cusp of all this cutting edge technology with like cell phones and then smartphones and all of these things. And you and I also used to work in the wireless industry, right? And
Yep.
so, like, I used to think I knew everything about phones. And then the other day, um, somebody asked me a question about an iPhone or something, and like, where was the setting for this? And I'm like, I have no idea. Like,
Right.
I haven't been involved that to that level of detail in so long that that technology has passed me by. And I feel like I'm getting older, right? I'm like, holy crap! Like I used to know those things like the back of my hand, and now I can't even find the basic setting because I'm not in tune with it anymore.
Right. Right. No, that's a great way to put it. Great way to put it. And just relates back to really why we're taking our time out for an episode like this, just to bring it to the forefront in the thought process of planning.
Exactly. So, with that confidence increasing, but yet the financial literacy decreasing as we age, that opens us up to falling for scams and making risky decisions and ignoring red flags. And that's where it's going to lead us to, we really need to understand the financial vulnerabilities that we have as we age. So let's break this all down. What are the actual financial risks that increase with cognitive decline?
Yeah. So a few things that we'll look at, we kind of hit on a little bit, mismanaging investments or withdrawals as we age, maybe a little bit overconfidence that comes with that. I think one thing that it doesn't come top of mind, but is something that's a real consideration, is falling victim to fraud or elderly financial abuse. Um, in addition to that, failing to make timely decisions, like rebalancing a portfolio and not realizing how much time has lapsed between one point and another, um, missing bill payments or tax deadlines, and neglecting long term care planning.
Yeah, I think also, managing and making those timely decisions when it comes to their income, to retirement income.
Yeah.
Um, a thing that comes to mind too with that is recency bias with the markets. We went through this historical bull run, right, where the S&P returned double digit returns over the last 12 years or so. And that's never happened before like that for that long. And if you're retiring in this era of this bull run, right? It's easy to just assume that, well, if returns keep going like this, I'm never going to have an issue getting income from my market account. And what most people don't realize is that everything is cyclical, and there's going to be ebbs and flows of those market returns. And something that we can't time or plan for necessarily in terms of when it's going to happen, but it could happen, and that is the sequence of returns risk that we face. So, just making those decisions on when I should take income and where from in terms of the account that the money's coming from, those types of decisions get harder the more you age, just because it's hard to process exactly what's going on at that moment in time.
Yeah.
According to the National Council on Aging, older Americans lose over $28 billion each year due to financial abuse and scams. So, Zach, why don't you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So this was that report that we found from National Council of Aging. It's not just scammers that we're considering here. Sometimes it's well-meaning but uninformed, whether it's children or family members or somebody close to the family, who end up making these costly mistakes when helping out. So it isn't necessarily always um, an intentional ploy by an individual, but sometimes just maybe a lack of information and education.
Yeah, I hate to admit it, but my grandmother's husband, I guess he's like my step grandfather. My grandfather passed away, so he's my step grandfather. They've been married for a long, long time, but I hate to admit it, but he's been scammed on multiple occasions. Um, the most recent one, and uh, God willing, it won't happen again. But he's older. He's like 80. I think he's like 88 years old or something. But what happened was the most recent one, and I don't mean to laugh, but it's like almost ridiculous that it happened. Like when I found out it happened, I I was like, how do you make that mistake? But somebody called him, and they were acting like they found out he's religious, right? He's a Christian, and he's very, very profound in his faith, and just completely about it. And he goes to church multiple times a week, which is great. But I don't know how this scammer found out about this, but they called him and claimed to be like a pastor from this big church. And it
Mhm.
wasn't even like located locally, but the outreach was like, and they used like Billy Graham, like they like name drop Billy Graham. This is
Oh,
such and
really?
such pastor and representative of the Billy Graham Foundation or something like that. And we're asking our Christian, brothers and sisters out there to help us with this family in need. And what we're asking you to do is to go to your local store and purchase a gift card, and then give us the code over the phone, and we'll put that gift card towards that family. And he went, and it was like a pretty substantial amount. It was over $1,000,
Wow.
and he got scammed. And what's crazy is it went on for a period of time. Like at first, it started out with like a little amount, and then like it started to progress. Like the next amount was more, and the cause was bigger. And it's crazy to me that that could happen, because I think while like you hear it and it sounds good, it's still like you can't trust anybody you just meet over the phone, you know. Um, so that happened, and I felt horrible for him. Um, but it's happened a few times now, and I think he's a target because he's not as sharp as he used to be,
Right.
and he's also a giving person by nature. He wants to help people, and that's a great thing. But when you become older and you can't process information as quickly or as accurately as you once could, but you're still a giving person by nature, that's a pretty, you know difficult mix to put together, because you're going to get scammed.
And to add to that, you look at the scamming abilities that are out there now and the advancements that have been made. I mean, I've got somebody that I know personally who she does a radio show in her industry, And they were able to, the scammers were able to take her voice, chop it up, and actually contact her daughter and say to her daughter, as if it were her, the AI bot was her saying, "Hey, I'm being held hostage for X amount of dollars. I need you to wire this much money." And the advancements made in these things are something that you and I would fall victim to. It's not just necessarily an age thing, it can also be somebody who just hasn't encountered that scam type yet. And the advancements being made are just insane. So, that much more reason for us to be careful too as we're doing this.
Wow, that's incredible, man. And that is scary because, technology as it continues to advance with this whole AI thing, um, it's crazy that the depths that somebody can go to get these types of this information and these like literally cloning a voice to then use it against somebody in a scam. Like that's
Yeah.
just wild. Um, but anyways, that really comes full circle to lead us into our next segment here. And, besides just aging and being more prone to possible scams, um, aging also can, in that cognitive decline, can also cause us to potentially become a burden on somebody, maybe even our own family.
Yeah. So whether it's asking them to manage bills, make investment decisions, or cover care expenses, or maybe uh, you know you're willing to move in with family, the added cost that comes with that puts a lot of pressure on the family dynamics, especially if we factor in are there grandchildren or children in the home. And we look at something like the sandwich generation. Recent research study shows that more than 50% of adults in their 40s and 50s are providing financial or caregiving support for aging parents, while also raising their own children. So we start to factor that in and what kind of stress that may create within the family dynamic, and that adds another layer to this overall planning.
Yeah, the sandwich generation is definitely interesting, and it's something that has, in recent times, become more of a prominent thing. I know in the neighborhood I just moved from, a couple of my neighbors, they had their like adult children living there with them, and then they also had their parents living there. And it's pretty common. Like it's not something that is rare these days. It has just to do with the changing times and the way that things work. But I know that it was putting my neighbor in kind of a stressful financial position because he's worried about his aging parents and having to take care of them from a financial perspective, but also having to help them manage all of their finances and healthcare related things. And
Mhm.
then they've got their children who you know um, are really dependent on their parents. Like they're literally in their 20s, but still dependent on their parents financially. From everything from like their college expenses to their gas money, and that's tough. And I hope that never happens in my situation. I'm trying to teach my kids how to be independent, but you never know. Cultural influences have a way of instilling itself in your ingraining itself in your children, even though you may try to teach them differently. So
Yep.
that's a very tough part of this type of scenario. But we've seen families, right, over time, including some of my own, fall apart over money, and even just trying to figure out what mom or dad would have wanted. It's just tough. It makes it tough of what they actually would have wanted, but you can avoid that, right? Trying to take the guessing game out, like what would mom or dad want us to do here? Instead of actually having that just become a question or a guess, we can avoid that altogether with the right planning.
Yeah, yeah. So speaking of, let's talk solutions. Because the podcast, obviously, the podcast reason we came out with this was to empower, right? To provide education and information around a subject matter that we cover every day. Um, so from our end of it, we really want to jump in and provide those solutions and some tools that we can put on our belt to use.
Yeah, so here are a few smart proactive moves that retirees and pre-retirees can make. And it's going to come down to simplifying, right? Simplifying your financial accounts. So it can come down to things like consolidating and organizing your qualified and non-qualified accounts. It can come to consolidating and organizing your bank accounts or checking and savings accounts, ultimately to help reduce the complexity by limiting the investment types and how many accounts you have in general. The second would be, looking at guaranteed income products. Obviously, our show is called the I Love Annuities podcast. I think one of the most under discussed benefits of income annuities or guaranteed income annuities is the fact that guaranteed income annuities, since they are an automatic retirement paycheck, and they ultimately reduce the reliance on judgment calls later in life. So if you're aging and you are concerned about A, living a longer life, but B, understanding that cognitive decline is a real thing and you never want to have to worry about being dependent on someone else, not just financially dependent, but more importantly, like just decision making dependent. um, if you never want your children or grandchildren or any loved ones to ever have to make a judgment call like, well, where do we take this income from? And how much should it be? And how often or frequent should we do this? An annuity is a great risk mitigation tool to help make that income stream more streamlined, more consistent, guaranteed for the rest of your life as long as you have a pulse. And it makes the management of your retirement income foundation literally it's on autopilot, so you don't have to worry about someone making the wrong decision. So ultimately, less management equates to fewer mistakes.
Yeah, great. Third one I'll jump in here is just setting up a trusted legal protection, right? So taking the right steps into whether it's just aging and getting into that point where you're nearing retirement, but also while you're in retirement, considering a power of attorney, revocable living trust, and clear written directives that you can share and you can potentially even involve your family in.
Yeah, I really believe that a trust is like the ultimate safety net in terms of your estate, right? The trust is the governance over your entire estate. What happens to you and your assets, who gets what and when. It can be a great protection tool also for, let's say you do have a fair share of money and your biggest fear is if something happens to me, too much is going to go to my grandchildren or whoever next of kin is, and they're going to be irresponsible with that money. If that's something that you feel is a concern, it is a valid one. I think everybody should have that concern to a degree. There's no more important thing or step in this process that you should be doing other than setting up a trust, because that trust is going to have all of the rules of how those assets are dispersed, how much of them is dispersed, and it can be dispersed over time. And I think that's really the important part of mitigating irresponsibility when it comes to someone inheriting a large sum of money.
Yeah, yeah, without a doubt. I had mentioned involving family as a part of that planning. So that's another key element here. So number four would be involving family and doing that earlier. So include adult children in the conversation while you're healthy and clear-minded, and by creating a plan together so that if certain situations happen as aging occurs, then there's a plan in place, how to manage these assets. And to your point, if a trust isn't in place, how those assets will be addressed.
Yeah, one of the things there, it kind of touches close to home here. My grandmother, my dad's mom, she passed away. It's, probably been 15 years now. It's been a pretty good while. And I remember she had gotten diagnosed with cancer and it ended up spreading like wildfire. And unfortunately, I hate to admit this, but financially, in terms of planning, my grandmother didn't have a trust. She didn't have anything. She didn't have any true plans in place. and she had not a ton of assets, but a fair amount that could be distributed across her children. And I remember by the time my uncle got around to realizing she wasn't going to make it, and he was like, "Crap, we need to figure out this whole trust thing because we want the assets to avoid probate." Um, an attorney came in to get her to sign, like he drew up the documents and stuff, but she wasn't cognitively there to
Mhm.
be able to sign them. And the attorney was literally like, "I can't do this. Like, she can't even sign her name." Like, she
Oh,
could talk, like, she could talk and things, and she knew who you were and all that, but when it came to, like, him explaining, like, what was in the trust and, like, what was in all of these documents, she couldn't process it, and she could barely hold a pen to write her own name, so the attorney backed out, and he's like, I can't do this."
mhm.
And, it really, man, thinking about it now, I'm like, "Dang, that was pretty that must have been horrible," but, um it comes down to involving your family early ultimately, and, like, everybody's gotta have this clear path forward if in the event something like this happens, and I don't believe that having a trust like, right now, Zach, you and I should have a trust, like, at our age, even though we're much younger, because, if something happens to us unexpectedly, um, there's going to be a process of distributing assets, and, our family needs to be aware of how to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it also another step into it that it avoids is that ultimate family dynamic where, you by not having that trust, these personal items, and I've endured it, from my side of the family to my wife's side, where personal items and personal assets become split up and becomes this. Well, I wanted it. It was more personal for me than it was for you, so it should be mine. And then somebody goes in the home at a later date and takes these things before anything is processed. And it becomes this back and forth, unnecessary battle that nobody wants to be a part of. So, going back to your point, having these steps in place will eliminate, hopefully, these events.
Yeah, I mean, another thing that comes to mind too is like even not just from a financial perspective, like who's going to receive what assets and when. The trust can also be very important for family heirlooms. Like who
Mhm.
gets grandma's ring, who gets grandpa's necklace. Like I've literally seen personally with people that passed, not in my family, but in close friends. I've literally seen families break up, and fight
Right.
over things like who's going to get grandpa's necklace or something, like
Yeah.
the trust can document all of that and determine who gets what. And at the, luckily it's at the, the trustee, the grantor. It's the grantor's wish, and they want it to go to somebody in particular, then that's what it does. And it determines who gets what,
Yeah.
and kind of avoids all of the he said, she said, and the bickering back and forth.
And I think, it brings up really all the points that we're making here, but involving the family in that process of understanding the trust and what's incorporated with that, who's getting what personal items, like you had mentioned, it alleviates the stress. There's certain expectation. There's an understanding going into it. So when that time comes, it's not a jarring event to the family, um, beyond the passing of the loved one.
Absolutely. And the next thing here on our list is obviously the planning for long-term care. We just had a recent episode that went live on our podcast for long-term care and how to utilize annuities to help plan for that type of event. And that's where they really shine in terms of being able to offer enhanced income benefits. So, obviously a long-term care event can be a real shock financially and mentally, obviously, to a family, and having a plan for that is definitely something that should be a priority for most people. Obviously, it takes some assets to be able to provide for that type of event, and being able to utilize the right tools to allow those assets to stretch further to help cover and offset those types of incurred costs can only help. And that's really ultimately what it's designed to do with those annuity products. So, it comes down to just understanding all of these pieces to this puzzle and understanding that, as we age, there's going to be all of these types of risks and things that require, um, ultimately brain power to help overcome them and help plan for them. And it's better to do them earlier than later.
Absolutely. And
Going
getting
right
into,
into that
oh, go
next
ahead.
going right into that next thought, it's tying all of this together. Again, we offer the right planning and the right way to assess a plan and appropriately right fit an annuity to an overall objective. That's ultimately our goal, is to help raise awareness and increase people's IQ when it comes to analyzing annuity products, to help them ultimately provide structure and safety in their overall retirement plan. So let's get a little bit more specific now in terms of how annuities really fit into all of this.
Right. So we know where our fit is, right? So we know, hence the name I Love Annuities podcast, what we're focused on and finding our piece of a solution where an annuity may fit in somebody's planning. And it's just a piece of that puzzle. So in looking at annuities, how can they fit into all of this? Ultimately, we look at income annuities. Jeremiah, you had mentioned earlier, where can income annuities, whether that's a single premium immediate annuity or some type of deferred income annuity or fixed index annuity with an income rider. These can provide that guarantee of income that reduce the burden of decision making, and really no need to worry about what to sell or when, because that income is coming in. So if we happen upon a care event where somebody's unable to access their monies because they're needing assistance, well, there's a steady paycheck coming in to assist with that. Furthermore, going into more detail about how annuities may help, if we've got an annuity that's intended for growth and accumulation, there's a guaranteed death benefit that comes with that. There's a guaranteed growth in some of these products. So depending upon the annuity, again, we go back to this key point that we've made before, there's a guaranteed element in each annuity policy. It's just a matter of what that guarantee is intended to do. So many also include spousal continuance for income. We had briefly just hit on that long-term care benefit. We can use an annuity for that purpose or the purpose of death benefit.
I think it's important to just understand that ultimately annuities reduce the number of decisions that you'll need to make over time, whether it comes to, to income or to long-term care benefits, or even to just protected and safe growth over time. It makes it a lot easier the older that you get. And the older that you get, I think all of us really value the peace of mind, the clarity, and the simplicity that having an annuity can offer and provide. I mean, I really love the benefit of an income annuity just being income on autopilot, retirement income on autopilot. You have to do nothing to get that income stream to pay you for the rest of your life. It's every month, every week, every 2 weeks, however you wish to disperse the income. It's just there, and it's in your bank account as a direct deposit. Or if you prefer checks in the mail, you get a check in the mail. But thinking of like how easy that becomes over time, and the benefits of that ease and simplicity, and how those benefits really impact the psychological aspect of your golden years. I love it, man. There's no more powerful tool in retirement planning than a guaranteed income annuity. And it's because that foundation of retirement, we talk about it all the time, starts with income. Income is king. And if you don't have reliable, consistent, and stable income, it really makes the rest of your picture in retirement a lot more challenging. And then you throw in the mix of that cognitive decline and all of these other things that are going on in the world and all of these other technology advances and all of these other things. It just makes it a lot more challenging And I think ultimately less confident. You're less confident because of all of these other factors. So when you can get that foundation, that is the real confidence builder. That foundation starts with income, and there's no more better tool to use for guaranteed income than an income annuity.
Yeah. Yeah. Great point. So really, if you want peace of mind, planning now is the gift that you give your future self and your family.
Yeah, I think you should take the time while you're still sharp to build a system and a plan that doesn't rely on you having to be sharp forever. That's really the heart of a good retirement plan, is
And
the
yeah,
fact that that plan is there to, you know, make it easier so you don't have to be sharp forever.
that's it. That's it. And annuities can play a huge role in that. Again, like we've mentioned before, it's not every piece to the puzzle, but it can be a piece of that puzzle. If you want to help, if you want help understanding which ones may make the most sense in your situation, we've got you. We're here for you on that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're really thinking about this and you can relate to the subject matter here, you're really ultimately trying to find the right solution. That's something that we specialize in. It, when it comes to annuities, we believe that these products are great at optimizing someone's retirement in a lot of different ways. The main way is the psychological aspect and removing some of the risks that we all face. And if you don't want to just be sold an annuity, but you truly want to understand annuities and you want to know how to compare and evaluate them side by side. And I'm not just talking one or two annuities, I'm talking about the entire gamut of fixed indexed annuities on the marketplace and income generating annuities on the marketplace, then that's what we specialize in. That's what we do. That's what we specialize in to help people like you make a better annuity buying decision. And we do that through education and transparency. And we would be honored to earn your business through taking you through an interactive and engaging process to just understand and then learn how to evaluate these products. And if you're interested in doing that, you can, in the show notes here, find the link to schedule your free annuity discovery meeting with one of our senior annuity advisors like Zach. And they'll hold your hand and take you through this process of understanding. It's very, very educational. And we connect with people through Zoom. So there's no need to get in your car and drive anywhere. We actually work with clients in all 50 states, and we do that through Zoom. So it's very simple. As long as you have a cell phone or some type of device and an internet connection, you can join us and we can take you through that. Maybe you're not ready to just schedule a meeting just yet and you're wanting to just find out more information about annuities. You can request a free report. There will also be a unique link for that. And that'll give you an inside look at, all of the available annuity products, all of the financial ratings of those annuity providers. If it's income, it'll tell you how much income you can expect to get on a guaranteed basis. If it's growth, we'll show you the rates and what you can expect there. But you'll use that link, request your free report, and we'll get that sent out to you too. But we really appreciate you tuning in. If you've gotten some value out of this episode, please give us a thumbs up, a like, and a share. That will help us reach the masses and help give this valuable information to the right people. And we certainly appreciate that as well. With that being said, this is the I Love Annuities podcast. I am Jeremiah Conger,
And I am Zachary Van Ness, and we are the Annuity
Annuity Dudes.
Dudes.
Until next time.